Have you ever vanished right when your family expected you to handle everything? For years, I was treated like a free catering service rather than a human being. But this year, I did not scream or argue. I simply walked away just hours before 30 hungry relatives arrived, leaving my father to explain why the holiday magic had suddenly stopped working. It was the quietest, most satisfying explosion I have ever ignited. My name is Kira Maddox. I am 34 years old, and if you saw me walking through the sliding glass doors of the Northbridge Medical Group building at 5 in the afternoon, you would see a woman who ostensibly has her life together. I was wearing a charcoal wool coat that cost me a week of salary. My leather boots were polished despite the salt and grime of the parking lot, and my title, Operations Manager, suggested I was someone who knew how to handle logistics, crises, and difficult personalities. But the truth, the one that sat heavy in my gut like a stone swallowed whole, was that I was completely hollowed out. It was mid-December in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which meant the sky had been the color of a bruised plum since 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The wind here does not just blow, it cuts. It finds the microscopic gaps in your scarf and slices right against the skin, reminding you that winter in the Rust Belt is not a season, but a test of endurance. Downtown, the streetlights were wrapped in garland, and the storefronts were aggressive with their holiday cheer, blinking red and green in a manic rhythm. But standing there on the asphalt, fumbling for my car keys with numb fingers, I felt absolutely nothing. No joy, no anticipation, just a low-grade, humming anxiety that had become the background noise of my entire existence. My phone rang. It was a specific ringtone, a sharp, jarring trill I had assigned to only one person. My stomach clenched before I even looked at the screen. It was a physical reflex, like a dog cowering before a rolled-up newspaper. I stared at the name flashing on the display. Dad. I debated letting it go to voicemail. I stood there, the wind whipping my hair across my face, watching the gray slush seep around the edges of my boots. But guilt is a powerful muscle, one that had been exercised daily for 3 decades. I slid my thumb across the screen and lifted the phone to my ear. "Hello, Dad," I said. My voice sounded thin, snatched away by the wind. "Christmas is at my house this year," Gordon Maddox said. There was no greeting, no asking how my day was, no inquiry about my health or my job or my life, just a statement of fact, delivered with the same tone a general uses to deploy troops to a losing front. I frowned, unlocking my car door but not getting in. I thought Aunt Paula was hosting. She said she wanted to try the new patio heater she bought. "Paula is flaky. I told her I would handle it," my father interrupted, his voice booming slightly as if he were driving. "Besides, the house looks better. It is more impressive. I have already invited everyone, 30 people, Kira, the whole lot, the Winds, the cousins from Erie, everyone. 30 people. The number hit me like a physical blow to the chest. 30 people meant 30 plates, 30 sets of silverware, 30 mouths expecting appetizers, mains, sides, desserts, and endless refills of wine. 30? I repeated, my breath hitching. "Dad, that is in 5 days. I am still working until the 23rd. You can take off early." He dismissed, as if my career were a whimsical hobby I engaged in to pass the time. "Listen, write this down. I need you to handle the food, and not just a ham and some rolls. I want a full spread, prime rib. Maybe those crab cakes you made 3 years ago, and the house needs a deep clean. I had the dogs in the living room last week and the carpet is a mess." I stood frozen, half in and half out of my sedan. The heat from the car's vents hadn't kicked in yet, but the chill spreading through my veins had nothing to do with the Pennsylvania winter. "You want me to cook for 30 people and clean the house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad, I am exhausted. I just finished a 10-hour shift. Can't we just cater it or do a potluck?" "Catering is impersonal, and potlucks are tacky," he scoffed. "People are driving 4 or 5 hours to get here. We are not serving them lukewarm casserole from a Tupperware container. It has to be perfect. Kira." He emphasized the word perfect with a hard consonant sound that grated against my ear. It was a trigger word for my entire life. Perfect was the stick he used to beat me with. Good grades were expected. Perfect grades were the baseline. A clean room was standard. A perfect room was the minimum requirement for affection. I don't have the budget for a prime rib dinner for 30 people right now, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. It was humiliating to admit. Even though I made good money, the problem wasn't my income. The problem was that being Gordon Maddox's daughter was an expensive subscription service I couldn't seem to cancel. Don't start with the money complaints, he snapped, his tone shifting from authoritative to irritated. You always do this. You make everything about the cost. It is Christmas. It is family. Don't buy cheap stuff. Kira, Uncle Ted is coming, and you know how he is about wine. Make sure it is decent. Make it worth their drive. Make it clear that we are doing well. He said we, but he meant him. He wanted the glory of the host without the labor of the servant. He wanted to sit at the head of the table, carving a roast he didn't buy, pouring wine he didn't select, in a house he didn't clean, accepting compliments he didn't earn. Dad, I really don't think I can. Stop being difficult, he cut me off. The sudden sharpness in his voice silenced me instantly. Do not be selfish, Kira. Everyone is looking forward to this. Don't ruin it because you are too lazy to go to the grocery store. I have to go. I have a tea time tomorrow morning and I need to prep my gear. Just get it done. The line went dead. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. The screen was dark, reflecting my own pale, tired face. I sat in the driver's seat and closed the door, shutting out the wind. The silence inside the car was deafening. I gripped the steering wheel, squeezing the leather until my knuckles turned white. A scream was building in my throat, a hot, jagged thing that wanted to tear its way out and shatter the windshield. I wanted to call him back. I wanted to scream that I was not a catering company. I wanted to tell him that I had spent $4,000 last year on a holiday miracle that he took sole credit for. I wanted to tell him that I was lonely and tired, and that I just wanted a father who asked me how I was, not what I could do for him. But I didn't scream. I didn't call back. The old programming kicked in. The software installed in my brain since I was 5 years old rebooted. Don't make a scene. Don't be the difficult one. If you do it well enough, maybe this time he will say thank you. Maybe this time he will see you. Yes, I whispered to the empty car. Okay, yes. My phone buzzed again, a text message. I looked down. It was from him. Remember, 30 people, and get the good linen napkins out of storage. Don't embarrass me. I stared at those 3 words. Don't embarrass me. Something inside my chest made a sound. It wasn't a loud crack. It was a soft, almost imperceptible snap, like a dry twig breaking under a heavy boot in a snowy forest. It was the sound of the tether finally snapping. I looked up through the windshield. The snow was starting to fall harder now, thick wet flakes that stuck to the glass. Beyond the parking lot, the highway led 2 ways. One way went toward my apartment, toward the grocery store, toward the bank where I would drain my savings to buy prime rib and expensive Cabernet for 30 people who would barely look me in the eye. The other way led out of town, toward Erie, toward nowhere. I looked at the text message one more time. Don't embarrass me. He wasn't worried about my stress. He wasn't worried about my finances. He was worried about his image. I was not his daughter. I was his stage manager. I was the props department. I was the lighting crew. And he was the star, waiting for the curtain to rise so he could shine. But a show cannot go on without a stage manager. A strange, cold calm settled over me. It was colder than the Pittsburgh wind, but it was steadying. It stopped the shaking in my hands. I put the car in reverse. I didn't reply to the text. I didn't cry. For the first time in 34 years, the fear of disappointing him didn't make my stomach churn. It made me feel light, weightless. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 5:15. The grocery stores would be packed. The traffic would be a nightmare. My father was probably at home, pouring himself a drink, satisfied that he had delegated the women's work to his competent, obedient daughter. 30 people, I said aloud, testing the words. I imagined the scene, 30 people arriving, 30 coats needing to be hung, 30 appetites, and an empty table. I backed out of the parking space. I wasn't going to the grocery store. I wasn't going to the bank. I was going to vanish. My apartment was quiet. It was the kind of aggressive, heavy silence that usually greets you after a funeral, not a Tuesday evening. I locked the door behind me and leaned against the wood, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. That low mechanical drone was the only sound in the world that did not want something from me. I did not turn on the lights. I just stood there in the gray gloom of the hallway, letting the heat of the apartment thaw my frozen cheeks, while my mind replayed the last 10 years of holidays like a corrupted film reel. Dad had said perfect. He had said, don't buy cheap stuff. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of tap water, my hand shaking slightly. I looked at the granite countertop and saw a ghost of Christmases past. I saw myself standing there last year, frantically arranging a charcuterie board that had cost me nearly $300. I remembered the specific instruction Dad had given me then. Make sure we have that aged Gouda Uncle Ted likes, and the Italian prosciutto, not the domestic stuff. It looks rubbery. I had driven to 3 different specialty markets to find that specific prosciutto. I had spent $400 on wine because Dad insisted that we could not be seen serving anything with a screw top. And on Christmas Day, I had watched from the kitchen doorway, apron stained with grease, as Dad gestured grandly to the table. I wanted to treat you all, he had boomed, swirling a glass of the Cabernet I had paid for. Nothing but the best for family. Dig in. He had accepted the praise like a king accepting tribute. Gordon, this spread is incredible, Aunt Paula had said. Gordon, you really outdid yourself. Uncle Ted had mumbled through a mouthful of the cheese I had bought. And I had stood there, invisible. I was not the daughter, I was the staff, and I had paid for the privilege of serving them. I sat down at my small dining table and opened my laptop. I needed to see it. I needed to see the damage in black and white before I could fully commit to the terrifying idea blooming in my chest. I logged into my bank account and scrolled back. December of last year. It looked like a crime scene. The numbers were staggering. There was a charge for $512 at the gourmet grocery store, a charge for $250 for the professional cleaning crew Dad had demanded because the baseboards looked dusty, a charge for $180 for fresh garlands because the artificial ones were too tacky. I scrolled back to the December before that. Same story. A dip in the graph that looked like a canyon. Then the December before that. I sat back, the glow of the screen illuminating my tired face. I was not a wealthy woman. I made a decent salary. But I had student loans. I had a car payment. I was trying to save for a house I might never afford. Yet, every single year, I was setting fire to $2,000 or $3,000 just to buy my father's approval. I was financing his ego with my credit card. I was buying peace, but the price kept going up due to inflation. And the peace never lasted longer than the time it took to wash the dessert plates. My phone rang again, shattering the silence. I flinched, my heart hammering, thinking it was him coming back for round 2 of his demands. But it was Jules. I picked up, and before I could even say hello, the air left my lungs in a long, shuddering sigh. I can hear you breathing, Jules Carter said. Her voice was sharp, clear, and grounded, the anchor I desperately needed. You sound like you just ran a marathon, or talked to your dad, which is basically the same level of physical stress. He wants me to host 30 people, I said. My voice sounded flat, detached. He called me 10 minutes ago, 30 people, 5 days away. He wants prime rib. He wants the house deep cleaned, and he told me not to embarrass him. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a long, heavy silence. 30 people, Jules repeated slowly. And let me guess, he is paying for exactly 0% of this? He told me not to be cheap, I replied, a bitter laugh bubbling up in my throat. He said people are driving a long way. Kira, Jules said, And her tone changed. It wasn't sympathetic anymore. It was clinical, cold. "Why are you doing this?" "Because he's my dad. Because if I don't, he will tell everyone I'm selfish. He will tell Aunt Paula I am unstable. You know how he spins things." "Let him spin," Jules snapped. "Listen to me closely. You are 34 years old. You are a successful operations manager. You run a department of 50 people. But when you walk into that house, you cease to be a person. You are not his daughter. Kira, you are his operating system. You are the software that runs his life so he can look like a functioning adult. He does not love you. He relies on your utility. There is a difference. You are his operating system." The words hit me harder than any insult could have. It was true. An operating system doesn't get thanked. It doesn't get gifts. It is expected to run invisibly in the background, processing commands, executing tasks, and if it glitches even once, the user gets frustrated and bangs on the keyboard. "I can't do it. Jules," I whispered. "I literally cannot afford it this year. My rent went up. I have $300 in my checking account until payday." "Then don't," Jules said. "What happens if you just don't?" "He will destroy me. The guilt trips, the phone calls to the relatives." "So remove the target," Jules said. "You can't be hit if you aren't there." I looked up from the laptop. My eyes drifted across the room to the hallway closet. The door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, I could see the handle of my old suitcase. It was a battered, hard-shell carry-on I hadn't used in 2 years because I spent every vacation day I had catering to my family. It looked less like luggage and more like a lifeboat. "Kira?" Jules asked. "You went quiet." "He sent me a text," I said, my eyes still fixed on the suitcase. He said, "Don't make me lose face." That is all he cares about. The face, the mask. "So take the mask off," Jules challenged. "Let the relatives see the real face. Let them see what Gordon Maddox looks like when he doesn't have his daughter there to light him properly and apply his makeup." I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. It wasn't rude. Jules would understand. We had reached the point where words were just delaying action. I stood up and walked to the closet. My movements felt automatic, efficient. I was in operations mode now. The problem? A toxic environment draining resources and morale. The solution? Terminate the contract. I pulled the suitcase out. Dust motes danced in the sliver of light from the street lamp outside. I dragged it into the bedroom and heaved it onto the mattress. I did not feel angry anymore. Anger is hot. Anger is messy. Anger involves screaming and crying and throwing things. I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to be cold. I wanted to be precise. I walked to my dresser and opened the drawer. I took out 3 sweaters, 2 pairs of jeans, my heavy winter socks. I folded them neatly, placing them into the suitcase with the care of a mortician preparing a body. I wasn't planning a grand announcement. I wasn't going to write a manifesto on Facebook. I wasn't going to call Aunt Paula and weep about how unfair it all was. That would just feed the drama. That would give Dad ammunition to call me hysterical or emotional. No, the only way to win this game was to stop playing. I looked at the empty side of the bed. For years, I had wished for a partner. Someone to share this burden with. Someone to defend me. But in that moment, standing alone in my dim bedroom with a half-packed suitcase, I realized I didn't need a defender. I just needed to leave the battlefield. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was loud in the quiet room. A sharp, final zip that sounded like a zipper on a body bag. I was not just packing clothes. I was packing my dignity. I was packing my bank account. I was packing my sanity. And I was taking them all away from Gordon Maddox. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the suitcase. "No more," I said to the empty room. I wasn't going to argue about the menu. I wasn't going to debate the cleaning schedule. I was simply going to cut the power cord and let the system crash. The Saturday morning sky was the color of wet slate when I pulled into my father's driveway. It was 6 a.m. The neighborhood was dead silent, the kind of silence that exists only in the suburbs before the leaf blowers and the screaming children wake up. My father's house sat dark and imposing at the end of the cul-de-sac. His car was in the driveway. covered in a thin layer of frost. He would be asleep for at least another 3 hours. Gordon Maddox did not rise before 9 on weekends, a luxury he claimed he earned after 40 years of work, though he had been retired for 5. I did not ring the doorbell. I used my spare key. Sliding it into the lock with the precision of a burglar, the tumbler clicked, a sound that used to make me anxious, the sound of entering his domain, his rules. Today, it sounded like a box unlocking. I stepped inside. The house smelled stale, a mix of old coffee and the distinct, dusty scent of a heating system that needed a filter change. I did not take off my boots. I walked straight to the kitchen, the linoleum squeaking softly under my heels. I had brought 3 large, heavy-duty IKEA bags with me, the blue ones that crinkle loudly if you aren't careful. I unfolded them on the kitchen island, smoothing them out with calm, gloved hands. I felt like a crime scene cleaner. Only I wasn't there to wipe away blood. I was there to wipe away the illusion of plenty. I opened the pantry. It was stocked to the ceiling, and as I looked at the shelves, I saw the history of my own financial bleeding. There were the jars of imported olives I had bought in October because they were on sale and Dad loves the big green ones. There were the boxes of artisanal crackers, the expensive truffle oil, the cans of crab meat, the bags of premium coffee beans. I had bought all of it. Over the last 12 months, I had slowly filled this pantry like a squirrel preparing for a winter that wasn't mine to survive. I started grabbing. I did not throw things. I moved with efficient, robotic speed. The olives went into the blue bag. The crackers followed. The expensive chocolates I had hidden behind the oatmeal so he wouldn't eat them before Christmas, into the bag. I cleared the shelves of anything that screamed celebration. I stripped the pantry of its luxury, leaving behind only the reality of his diet: a half-empty box of generic cereal, a jar of peanut butter, a loaf of white bread, and 6 cans of soup. It took me 20 minutes to strip the kitchen of its holiday magic. When I was done, the counters were bare. The fridge looked cavernous, holding only a carton of milk, some beer, and leftover takeout containers. I carried the heavy bags to the back door, ready to load them into my trunk, but I stopped at the hallway desk. This was where he kept the house administration, which was a fancy way of saying he threw his mail in a pile and waited for me to sort it. I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. I needed to check something. I had a gnawing suspicion that had kept me awake half the night. I flipped through the hanging folders until I found the tab marked House Maintenance. Inside was a fresh contract for Sparkle Clean Services, the company scheduled to do the deep clean on Monday. I pulled the paper out. My eyes scanned to the bottom line. Billing entity, Kira Maddox. Payment method, Visa, ending in 4492. Signature, on file. I felt a cold flush of heat rise up my neck. He hadn't just asked me to organize the cleaners. He had set up the account in my name. He had authorized a recurring charge of $250 on my card without even asking for the physical card. Likely using the numbers I had foolishly trusted him with for an emergency purchase 3 years ago. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was 6:40 in the morning. The cleaning service opened at 7, but they had an automated line. I dialed the number. "Thank you for calling Sparkle Clean," the robotic voice chirped. "For cancellations, press 2. I pressed 2. "Please enter your account number." I typed it in from the sheet in my hand. "You are canceling your appointment for Monday, December 23rd. Is this correct?" "Yes," I said to the machine. My voice was steady, polite. "Confirm cancellation." "Cancellation confirmed. A cancellation fee of $50 will be charged to the card on file." "Fine," I whispered. $50 was a cheap price to pay to stop the bleeding. I hung up. I put the contract back in the folder, but I left the drawer slightly open. A small detail. A glitch in the matrix for him to find later. Next came the living room. This was the stage. This was where the 30 relatives would congregate to admire Gordon Maddox's hospitality. I opened the credenza where the good stuff lived. The Belgian linen tablecloths, mine. The heavy silver candlesticks, mine. The the set of 24 gold-rimmed dessert plates that I had hunted down at an estate sale because he said paper plates were for trash people. I took them all. I didn't take them to the car, though that would be theft. And I wasn't a thief. I was a manager reallocating resources. I carried the stacks of plates, the linens, and the heavy silver to the guest room down the hall. This was the room he used for storage, the one with the finicky lock that required a skeleton key. I placed everything inside on the bare mattress. The perfect Christmas was now piled in a dark, dusty room. I stepped out, closed the door, and inserted the skeleton key. I turned it. The mechanism clicked shut with a heavy, final thud. I pulled the key out and dropped it into my pocket. I wouldn't take it with me. I would hide it later. Somewhere safe. Somewhere he would never look, because he never looked anywhere that required effort. I walked back to the kitchen. The house felt different now. It didn't feel warm. It felt echoey. It felt like a bachelor pad. It looked like the home of a man who lived alone and did not know how to cook. I tore a piece of paper from the notepad by the fridge. I clicked a pen. My hand hovered over the paper for a second. I thought about writing a paragraph. I thought about explaining the credit card, the cleaning service, the exhaustion. But explanations are for people who care to understand. I wrote 3 sentences. I am going away for a few days. This year, I am not cooking. I am not cleaning. And I am not serving. I hope you have a perfect Christmas. I placed the note on the center of the empty kitchen island. It looked stark white against the dark granite. Next to the note, I placed my spare house key. That was the final severance. Leaving the key meant I wasn't coming back to check on him. It meant I was surrendering my access. I was demoting myself from staff to visitor. I picked up the heavy blue bags of food. The handles dug into my palms, but the pain felt grounding. I walked out the back door, the cold morning air hitting my face like a splash of ice water. I loaded the bags into my trunk. The suspension of my car dipped slightly under the weight of the groceries I had paid for. I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. I glanced at the house one last time. The windows were still dark. He was still sleeping, dreaming of his prime rib and his impressed relatives. He had no idea that while he slept, the elves had come, not to build toys, but to dismantle the workshop. I put the car in drive and rolled down the driveway. I didn't speed. I didn't peel out. I drove 25 miles per hour, obeying every traffic law, driving away from the house as if I had just finished a long, grueling shift and punched out for the last time. The city limits of Pittsburgh dissolved behind me into a blur of gray highway and bare trees. I had been driving for 2 hours, maintaining a steady 65 miles per hour, my eyes fixed on the white lines of the interstate. For the first hour, the silence in the car was absolute, a protective bubble I had inflated around myself. Then, at exactly 9:15 in the morning, the bubble popped. My phone, sitting in the cup holder next to me, began to vibrate. It wasn't a gentle buzz. Against the hard plastic, it sounded like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. I didn't look. I knew who it was. The timeline was mathematically precise. Dad woke up at 9. He walked to the kitchen at 9:05. He saw the empty counters at 9:10. He read the note at 9:12. And now, the explosion. The vibration stopped, then started again immediately, then again. I glanced sideways. Dad, Dad, Dad. The screen lit up with text messages, scrolling down so fast I couldn't read them all, but I caught fragments that burned themselves into my peripheral vision. Where are you? Is this a joke? Pick up the phone, Kira. The fridge is empty. What the hell is going on? I kept my hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm of conditioned fear. My body wanted to pull over. It wanted to call him back and apologize, to say it was a misunderstanding, to turn the car around and sprint to the grocery store to fix it. That was the muscle memory of 34 years. But I didn't lift my foot from the gas pedal. A new message popped up, longer this time. You need to come back right now. This is childish. I have 30 people coming in 2 days. Do not do this to the family. They are counting on you. Family, I said aloud to the empty car. The word tasted sour. He wasn't worried about me. He wasn't asking if I was hurt, or if I had a mental breakdown, or if I was safe. He was worried about the 30 people. He was worried about the audience. I forced myself to breathe. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. With every mile I put between myself and that house, the crushing weight on my chest lightened. It was a physical sensation, like taking off a lead vest I hadn't realized I was wearing. The panic was still there, buzzing like the phone. But underneath it was a strange, cool current of relief. I wasn't there. I wasn't standing in that kitchen being yelled at. I was here, moving at 65 miles per hour toward my own life. The phone buzzed again, a different name this time. Aunt Paula. I felt a pang of betrayal. Paula was the nice aunt, the peacemaker, the one who always slipped me a $20 bill when I was a teenager and whispered, "Buy yourself something pretty." I waited until I saw a rest stop sign. I needed to read this properly. I pulled off the highway, parking in a spot far away from the few trucks idling there. I picked up the phone. "Kira, honey, your dad just called me. He is frantic. He says you are having a bit of a moment and drove off. He says you are feeling oversensitive about the planning. Just come back. Sweetie, we can smooth this over. Don't ruin Christmas over a mood." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Oversensitive, a mood. I laughed. A short, dry sound that startled me. Of course, that was the narrative. He hadn't told her. I demanded she cook for 30 people on her own dime and she quit. He told her, "Kira is having an episode." He was already rewriting reality. He was painting me as the unstable daughter, the ticking time bomb that had finally gone off, while he played the bewildered, victimized father who just wanted a nice holiday. If I went back now, that label would stick forever. I would be the crazy one who almost ruined Christmas. I would have to apologize to him for his abuse. My thumb hovered over the reply button. I wanted to type out the truth. I wanted to send her the receipts, the bank statements, the cleaning contract. But then another message came through. It was from Jules. "Don't you dare answer them. I know your phone is blowing up. I can feel the disturbance in the force. Listen to me. Kira, if you turn that car around, you are teaching them that all they have to do is scream loud enough and you will fold. If you go back, you are signing a lifetime contract to be their doormat. Keep driving." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Jules was right. Explaining was a trap. Arguing was a trap. The only winning move was silence. I put the car back in gear and merged onto the highway. I drove for another 2 hours until I reached a small town near the banks of Lake Erie. It wasn't a tourist destination, especially not in winter. It was a working-class town with brick buildings and gray skies, quiet and unpretentious. I found a small motel on the edge of town. It wasn't the Ritz, but it wasn't a dive either. It was clean, functional, and anonymous. I walked into the lobby. The air smelled of lemon polish and radiator heat. I paid for 4 nights with my own credit card, the card that would usually be maxed out on prime rib and champagne right now. "Just one key?" the receptionist asked, barely looking up from her computer. "Just one," I said, "and I don't need housekeeping. I just need quiet." I unlocked the door to room 214. It was simple. A queen bed with a floral spread, a small desk, a television from the early 2000s. It was the most beautiful room I had ever seen because it was empty of expectations. There were no dirty dishes here, no dust bunnies I was responsible for, no relatives judging my outfit. I dropped my bag on the floor and walked into the bathroom. I turned on the harsh fluorescent light and looked in the mirror. I looked tired. My skin was pale, and there were dark circles under my eyes that concealer couldn't hide. My hair was windblown from the drive, but as I leaned closer to the glass, I saw something else. The panic in my eyes was fading. The frantic, hunted look of a woman trying to please everyone was gone. In its place was something harder, something solid. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking at Gordon Maddox's daughter. I was looking at Kira. Just Kira. I went back into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. I took my phone out of my pocket. It was still buzzing. 19 missed calls, 42 text messages. The little red notification bubbles were like drops of blood, demanding attention. I didn't open them. I went into the settings menu. I found the Do Not Disturb function. I toggled it on. Then, for good measure, I went to the ringtone volume and slid the bar all the way to the left until the little speaker icon had a line through it. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It felt like a shield. I lay back on the bed, staring at the popcorn ceiling. I was alone in a strange town, 3 days before Christmas, with no plan and a family that probably hated me right now. But for the first time in my adult life, I was free. I closed my eyes and let the silence wash over me. The storm was raging back in Pittsburgh. I knew that. The hurricane was spinning, tearing through the family phone tree. But I was no longer in the eye of it. I was miles away, watching the radar, safe on higher ground. The Sunday morning light in Erie was thin and watery, filtering through the beige curtains of the motel room. It was 11 in the morning. I had slept for 10 hours. A deep, dreamless sleep that felt more like a coma than rest. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee from the lobby, watching the dust motes dance in the air. The silence I had fought so hard for yesterday was still holding, but the air felt charged, like the heavy static atmosphere before a thunderstorm breaks. My phone was still on silent, face down on the nightstand. I had ignored it for 18 hours, but then it lit up, not with a call, but a single text message. I glanced at the screen and saw the name, Caleb Wynn. My stomach dropped. Caleb was my cousin, Aunt Paula's son. He was a quiet man, an accountant who usually spent family gatherings hiding in the corner with a beer, avoiding eye contact. Caleb never texted. He never got involved. If Caleb was reaching out, the dam had not just cracked, it had burst. I picked up the phone and read the message. People are here early. The driveway is full. Where are you? My heart slammed against my ribs. Early? They weren't supposed to arrive until 4 in the afternoon. That was the schedule. That was always the schedule. But then I remembered. Dad had told them to come early. Of course he had. He probably told them to come for light bites and drinks at noon because he wanted to show off the house for longer, assuming I would have had appetizers ready since dawn. For a split second, the old reflex took over. My muscles tensed to run. I looked at my car keys on the dresser. I could be there in 2 hours, if I drove fast, if I stopped at a grocery store on the way. I could maybe throw together a cheese board before the main crowd arrived. I could salvage the image. I could save him. I stood up, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. "Sit down," a voice in my head commanded. It sounded like Jules. "Sit down. Kira." I forced myself to sit back on the mattress. I gripped the edge of the duvet until my knuckles turned white. I closed my eyes and breathed. In for 4, out for 4. I was not a firefighter. This was not my emergency. The phone lit up again. This time, it was a call. Aunt Paula. I stared at the name. If I didn't answer, I could pretend none of this was happening. But I needed to know. I needed to know if the bomb had actually detonated or if it was still ticking. I slid my thumb across the screen and put the phone to my ear. I didn't say hello. "Kira!" Paula's voice was a harsh whisper, vibrating with a panic I had never heard from her before. "Kira, thank God. Where are you? Are you at the store?" "No," I said. My voice was calm, shockingly so. "I am not at the store, Aunt Paula." "Then where are you?" Her voice pitched up. "There are 5 cars in the driveway. The Millers just pulled up. Uncle Ted is walking up the steps. Kira, the house it is empty." "I know," I said. "What do you mean, you know?" She sounded frantic, breathless. "There is nothing here. I went into the kitchen. The counters are bare. The fridge has a carton of milk and some leftover Thai food. There are no appetizers. There is no ham. There are no decorations. The dining room table doesn't even have a cloth on it." "I know," I repeated. "Gordon is upstairs," she hissed, lowering her voice as if sharing a state secret. "He is shaving. He yelled down that he would be ready in a minute. He is acting like everything is fine. He thinks you are downstairs prepping. Kira, you have to tell me what is going on. Did the caterers cancel? There were no caterers, Paula, I said. What? There were no caterers. There was never a plan. Dad called me 5 days ago and told me to do it all. He told me to handle 30 people. He told me to pay for it. Well, Paula stammered, falling back on her usual peacemaking script. Well, surely you two discussed this. He said you were just being a little difficult. He told me yesterday you were having a mood and that you were just running late. A mood? I echoed. The anger flared, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. Is that what he said? He said you were being sensitive about the workload, Paula said, her voice pleading. He said you stormed off, but you would be back. Everyone is asking for you. Kira, they are standing in the foyer with their coats on, asking where the drinks are. It is freezing in here because nobody turned the heat up. It is awkward. You need to come home. Ask him, I said. What? Ask him right now. He is downstairs by now, isn't he? He just walked into the living room, Paula whispered. I could hear the rustle of fabric, the murmur of voices in the background. Ask him if he ever asked me if I could host 30 people, I said. Ask him if he gave me any money for the food. Ask him if he checked with me before he invited the entire extended family. Kira, I can't do that. It is Christmas, Paula said, appalled. Then I can't help you, I said. In the background, through the phone line, I heard the sounds of reality crashing down. I heard the distinct creak slam of the pantry door opening and closing. That would be Uncle Ted, looking for the snacks that weren't there. Hey, Gordon, a male voice, Cousin Mike, boomed in the distance, faint but audible. Where are the beers, buddy? Fridge is looking a little light. There was a pause, a thick, heavy silence that traveled over the miles. Then I heard my father's voice. It was jovial, but thin, the fake laugh he used when he was cornered. Oh, you know Kira. She is probably running behind with the supplies. She likes to make an entrance. Just have a seat. She will be here any minute. He was still lying. He was standing in the wreckage of his own making, and he was still using my name to patch the holes in the roof. He is lying to you, Paula, I said softly. Kira, please, Paula begged. Just come back, even for 2 hours. Just bring some pizzas. Bring anything. We can pretend the oven broke. Just don't let him stand there like this. It is humiliating. It is supposed to be, I said. What? I left a note. Paula, on the kitchen island. Did he show you the note? No, she said. He just said you were out. I am not coming back, I said. The words hung in the air between us. I had said them before to myself, but saying them out loud to another family member felt like crossing a physical border. It was irreversible. You don't mean that, Paula said. Think about the family. Think about how this looks. I am thinking about it, I said. For 10 years, I have made him look like the perfect host. I spent my money. I used my vacation days. I cleaned his toilets and cooked his roasts, and he took the credit every single time. Today, you are not seeing a disaster. Aunt Paula, you are seeing the truth. This is what the holiday looks like when I don't set myself on fire to keep you all warm. Kira. I am not coming, I said again, firmer this time. I am safe. I am fine. But I am not there. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I didn't wait for her to respond. I pressed the red button and ended the call. I stared at the phone in my hand. My fingers were trembling, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of release. I imagined the scene back at the house. I imagined 30 people standing in their winter coats in a cold living room, looking at a man who had no wine, no cheese, and no daughter to blame. The stage was set. The audience was seated, but the stage manager had quit, and for the first time in his life, Gordon Maddox was going to have to perform his own show. The phone on the nightstand lit up again. I watched it warily, like one might watch a bomb that had failed to detonate on the first attempt. I expected another barrage from Aunt Paula, or perhaps a threatening voicemail from my father. but the name flashing on the screen was one I had not anticipated. Darlene Shaw. Darlene was not a Maddox by blood. She was married to my cousin Mark, a sweet but oblivious man who spent most family gatherings watching football in the den. Darlene, however, was different. She was a senior internal auditor for a major logistics firm. Her entire career was built on looking at a set of numbers that everyone claimed were correct, staring at them until they confessed their secrets, and finding the one decimal point that proved someone was stealing. She had eyes like lasers and a tolerance for nonsense that hovered somewhere around 0%. I picked up the phone. My hand was steady now. The panic had burned itself out, leaving behind a cold, hard ash of resolve. "Hello? Kira?" Darlene's voice came through, clear and crisp. There was no hysteria in her tone, no accusation. "Are you safe? That is the only question I need you to answer right now. Are you physically safe?" The question caught me off guard. Everyone else had asked where the food was. Everyone else had asked why I was being difficult. Darlene was the first person to ask if I was okay. "I am safe," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. "I am in a motel near Erie. I am alone." "Good," she said. "Okay, step 1 is complete. Now, I need you to clarify something for me. I am standing in the foyer. Your father is currently holding court in the living room. He is telling everyone that you snapped under pressure. He is telling Aunt Marge that he asked you for a little help with the cooking and you had a, quote, meltdown." I closed my eyes. "I didn't have a meltdown. Darlene." "Did you communicate your departure?" she asked. It sounded like a deposition. "I left a note," I said. "On the kitchen island, right next to my spare key. I wrote that I was not cooking, cleaning, or serving this year. I was very specific." "I see," Darlene said. Her voice dropped an octave, turning icy. "Well, that is interesting, because Gordon just told the room that you vanished without a word. He is playing the confused, abandoned father perfectly. He has actually managed to squeeze out a tear." "He is lying," I said. "I know he is lying, Kira," Darlene said. "I found the note." My eyes snapped open. "You found it?" "It was in the trash can under the sink," she said. "Crumpled up. I smoothed it out. I read it. But that is not why I called you." There was a pause. In the background, I could hear the murmur of the party, or rather, the wake. I heard my father's voice, loud and booming, offering someone a drink from a bottle of whiskey that I knew for a fact was the only alcohol left in the house because he hadn't bought any wine. "Kira," Darlene said, and her tone shifted from investigator to ally. "I have been watching this family for 10 years. I have watched you run around this house like a headless chicken every Christmas. I have watched you scrub dishes while your dad smokes cigars on the porch. But I need you to tell me the truth about one thing, and don't lie to cover for him." "Okay," I whispered. "Who pays for it?" The question hung in the air, heavy and absolute. "Who pays for the prime rib?" Darlene continued, relentless. "Who pays for the cases of expensive Cabernet? Who pays for the professional cleaners that come in before the party? Who pays for the fresh holly garlands and the artisanal cheese board?" I swallowed hard. The shame of it washed over me. Not the shame of doing it, but the shame of having been used for so long. "I do," I said. "All of it?" "All of it," I confessed. "The food, the alcohol, the decor. I even pay the cleaning service. The account is in my name. He doesn't contribute anything. He just tells me what to buy." Darlene let out a sharp breath. It was a sound of validation. I knew it. I did the mental math on his pension versus this lifestyle 5 years ago, and the numbers never added up. He is not hosting this party. Kira, you are. He is just the venue manager. "He told everyone I was being selfish," I said, the bitterness rising in my throat. "Of course he did," Darlene said. "He has to. Listen to me very carefully. Kira, do not come back. If you walk through that door right now with pizzas or apologies, you are handing him the shovel to bury you with. He is currently turning you into the villain so that nobody notices he is a fraud. If you come back, You accept that role. You accept that you are the problem. I feel bad for the family, I said weaky. They traveled so far. They are adults, Darlene cut in. They can order Chinese takeout. They can survive one night without your prime rib. This is not about their dinner. This is about your life. He has been monetizing your guilt for a decade. Stop the transaction. What are you going to do? I asked. Me? Darlene's voice brightened with a terrifying sort of cheerfulness. I am going to go into the living room. I am going to wait for a lull in the conversation, and then I am going to ask a question. Darlene, don't make a scene, I said, though a part of me desperately wanted her to. I won't make a scene, she promised. I am an auditor. Kira, we don't make scenes. We just highlight discrepancies. Darlene, stay in Erie, order room service, watch a movie, turn your phone off. She hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, my heart pounding in a rhythm that was half fear, half exhilaration. I felt like I was watching a demolition crew set charges on a building that had been condemning me for years. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The silence in the motel room stretched tight. I imagined the scene back in Pittsburgh. I imagined the cold living room, the confused relatives, the empty stomach of the house growling for food. Then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Caleb. I picked it up. The message was short, but it painted a picture more vivid than any video could. Darlene just asked him who usually pays for the catering. She asked it loud. The whole room went quiet. He is turning red. You need to see this. I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. I wasn't crying, but the release was overwhelming. For 34 years, I had carried the secret of my father's incompetence like a heavy stone. I had protected his ego at the expense of my own bank account and sanity. But now, the stone was down, and Darlene Shaw had just kicked it over for everyone to see. I sat cross-legged on the motel bed, my phone plugged into the wall charger because the battery was draining faster than I could track. I was miles away, safe in the anonymous quiet of Erie, but my mind was standing right there in the living room of the house I grew up in. Caleb had become my eyes and ears, sending me a play-by-play of the demolition of Gordon Maddox's reputation. His messages were short, clipped, and devastating. Darlene didn't let up. Caleb texted. She just asked him, Gordon, when you say we provide the feast, which bank account does that come from? I could imagine the silence that followed, that heavy, suffocating silence where the only sound is the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Dad tried to laugh it off. The next message read, he said, Oh, it all comes out of the family pot. We all chip in. I stared at the screen. The family pot. There was no family pot. There was just my checking account and his delusions of grandeur. Darlene looked around the room. Caleb continued. She asked the room, Did anyone here write a check for the prime rib last year? Or the seafood tower the year before? Because that looked like a $2,000 spread. I held my breath. This was the moment. This was the moment where they would either turn on Darlene for being rude, or they would turn on the math. Uncle Ted spoke up. Caleb wrote, he said, I thought Gordon's investments were doing well. He told me the catering was a gift from his dividends. My jaw tightened. Dividends. My father hadn't seen a dividend check since 2015. He had been living on Social Security and the rent I paid him to keep my old room, which I never used. Then Mom cracked. Caleb texted. He meant Aunt Paula. I felt a pang of sympathy for her. Paula hated conflict. She would walk over broken glass to avoid an awkward conversation, but Darlene had backed her into a corner where the truth was the only exit. Mom said, Actually, I was with Kira at the checkout line last year. She paid for the wine. I saw her use her personal card. I asked if Gordon would reimburse her, and she just shook her head. The text bubble sat there, glowing on the screen. It was done. The seed of doubt had been planted, watered, and was now blooming into a full-blown realization. The perfect host mask was slipping. A new message popped up, but it wasn't from Caleb. It was from a number I hadn't heard from in months. My cousin, Sarah. Kira, The message read, "I am sitting here listening to this. I honestly thought your dad paid for everything. I thought you just liked organizing things. I feel terrible. We all just showed up and ate and drank and never thought to ask why you look so tired. I am so sorry." I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. They weren't angry tears. They were tears of relief. For years, I thought they saw me as the uptight, bossy daughter who wouldn't let anyone help. I realize now that they didn't know. They simply didn't know. They had been sold a story where I was the capable manager and my father was the generous benefactor. They weren't malicious. They were just an audience who believed the playbill. I went back to Caleb's thread. "Dad is backtracking hard," Caleb reported. "He is mumbling about how you insisted on paying because you wanted the points on your credit card. Nobody is buying it. The vibe in the room has changed. It is not mad. It is just awkward. Like we all just realized we have been watching a magic trick and the wires are visible." Then, the inevitable happened. The hunger set in. Uncle Ted just asked what we are going to do for food. Caleb texted, "Dad looks panicked. He is offering to look in the freezer for some frozen burgers." I almost laughed. There were no burgers. I had cleared the freezer too. Darlene just stood up. Caleb wrote, she said, "Gordon, sit down. Stop pretending. We are not having a banquet. Does anyone object to pizza?" I waited. I expected resistance. My family was proud. They liked their linen napkins and their crystal glasses. They liked the performance of wealth, even if it was thin. Everyone is nodding. Came the next text. Uncle Ted is actually laughing. He said he prefers pepperoni to prime rib anyway because the rib gives him heartburn. They are ordering 10 large pizzas from the place on Main Street. 10 pizzas, $150, maximum. Split between 5 families. It was affordable. It was simple. It was normal. I leaned back against the headboard. I had spent weeks stressing over the menu. I had lost sleep over whether the crab cakes would be soggy or the roast would be dry. I had convinced myself that if the food wasn't Michelin star quality, the family would disintegrate. But they didn't care. They just wanted to eat. The perfection was never for them. It was for him. It was the costume he wore to feel important. An hour later, my phone pinged with a photo from Caleb. I opened it. The image was blurry, taken in low light, but it was clear enough. The living room, which was usually staged like a museum exhibit during Christmas, looked chaotic. There were cardboard pizza boxes stacked on the coffee table. Uncle Ted was eating a slice with one hand, holding a beer in the other, and he was leaning back on the sofa with his shoes off, something Dad never allowed. Aunt Paula was sitting on the floor, laughing at something Darlene was saying. Even Cousin Mark looked relaxed, his tie loosened. There were no crystal glasses. There were no silver platters. There was just a group of people eating greasy food on a Sunday afternoon. And in the corner of the frame, I saw my father. He was sitting in his armchair, holding a slice of plain cheese pizza. He wasn't smiling. He looked smaller, without the props, without the grand gesture of the perfect host. He was just an old man in a sweater. He wasn't the center of attention. The conversation was flowing around him, not through him. I looked at that photo for a long time. I had spent my entire adult life trying to build a stage for him, terrified that if the curtain fell, the family would stop loving us. I thought I was buying their affection with expensive cheese and perfectly folded napkins. But looking at Uncle Ted laughing with a string of mozzarella hanging from his lip, I realized the truth. The stage wasn't holding the family together. It was keeping them apart. The perfection was a wall. It made everyone stiff, formal, and grateful. Now, with the wall gone, they were just a family. I typed a reply to Caleb. "They look happy." Caleb typed back immediately. "They are. Nobody is stressed. Nobody is worried about spilling wine on the tablecloth. Honestly, this is the best Christmas Eve we have had in years. You did good, Kira. By doing nothing, you did good." I set the phone down on the nightstand, the knot in my chest, the one that had been there since November, finally unraveled. I wasn't there to serve them. I wasn't there to fix it. And the world hadn't ended. I stood up and walked to the window, pulling back the beige curtain to look out at the motel parking lot. It was snowing again. Light flurries dusting the cars. I was alone in a motel room on Christmas, eating vending machine crackers. By all accounts, this should have been a sad moment, but I felt a profound sense of victory. I had resigned from my position as the family martyr, and for the first time, I was curious to see what would happen next. Not because I was controlling the outcome, but because I was finally just watching the show. The sun had gone down over Erie, turning the sky outside my motel window into a deep, bruising purple. The snow had stopped, but the temperature was dropping, sealing the world in a layer of ice. Inside room 214, the air was still and warm, but the digital buzzing of my phone kept pulling me back to the reality I had fled. The tone of the messages had shifted. Earlier in the day, my father's texts had been sharp, commanded arrows designed to pierce my defenses. Pick up, don't be selfish, come back. They were the words of a general whose soldier had deserted the post. But as the evening wore on, and the reality of the pizza boxes and the unserved wine settled in, the aggression began to dissolve into something far more pathetic: confusion. At 7 o'clock, a text appeared. Connie is asking for coffee. Do we have decaf? I can't find the beans. At 7:15, the dishwasher is blinking red. What does that mean? At 7:30, are you really doing this, Kira? Are you really not coming back tonight? I didn't answer. I couldn't. To answer would be to solve the problem. And solving the problem was exactly why I was in this mess. If I told him where the decaf beans were, hidden in the freezer, bottom shelf, behind the frozen peas, I would be re-engaging the mechanism. Then, my voicemail notification dinged. He had left a message. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the phone in both hands. I hesitated. Hearing his voice was different from reading his texts. Texts you can project a tone onto. A voice is raw data. I pressed play. Kira. His voice sounded tinny and small through the speaker. There was background noise, the clatter of plates, the hum of voices, but he sounded isolated, like he was calling from a bunker. Look, I don't know where the garbage bags are. The big black ones? The bin is overflowing with the pizza boxes, and Uncle Ted is asking where to put the cans, and Aunt Paula is asking about breakfast tomorrow. I don't know what to tell them. Call me back, please. I don't know how to run this. The message ended with a soft click. I lowered the phone. A heavy, aching silence filled the room. I don't know how to run this. It was the most honest thing Gordon Maddox had said in 20 years, and it hit me with the force of a physical blow. He truly didn't know. It wasn't just laziness. It was a complete, cultivated ignorance. He didn't know where the garbage bags were because he had never taken out the trash after a party. He didn't know about breakfast because breakfast simply appeared, like magic, every morning at 8 o'clock when I was there. I realized then that I hadn't just been a daughter or a servant. I had been his external brain. I was the memory bank where he stored the location of the cleaning supplies, the expiration dates of the milk, and the social security numbers of his life. By leaving, I hadn't just removed the labor, I had lobotomized the household. It was tragic, it was pathetic, and for a fleeting second, I felt a sharp pang of guilt. He was an old man, standing in a kitchen he owned but did not understand. Surrounded by trash he didn't know how to remove. My thumb hovered over the call button. I could just tell him. I could tell him the bags were under the sink, in the back, behind the dishwasher pods. It would take 10 seconds. Then a text from Darlene came through, slicing through my wavering resolve. Don't feel bad, she wrote. I see you reading the messages. Do not engage. I typed back, he sounds lost. He left me a voicemail asking about garbage bags. Darlene's reply was instant. He is not lost. He is experiencing consequences. There is a difference. And just so you know, the family isn't angry about the pizza. Nobody is complaining about the food. They are angry because they realized he lied to them. They are realizing that every generous host moment he had for the last decade was stolen valor. He is losing the room. Kira, don't go back and help him win it back. Stolen valor. Darlene had a way with words. I put the phone down. She was right. If I called him back, I would be soothing his ego, not helping the family. But the guilt lingered. It is a strange thing to mourn a relationship that is still alive. I sat there in the dim light, feeling a profound sense of loss. I wasn't mourning the father I had. I was mourning the father I wanted. I wanted a dad who called to ask how my drive was, not where the coffee beans were. I wanted a dad who invited 30 people because he wanted to see them, not because he wanted them to see him. I needed a reality check. I dialed Jules. "Tell me I am not a monster," I said when she picked up. "You are not a monster," Jules said immediately. She was chewing something, probably her own Christmas Eve dinner. "You are a woman who finally resigned from a job she never applied for." "He sounds so sad, Jules. He asked about breakfast." "Kira." Jules's voice went sharp. "Listen to me. That sadness, that confusion, that is a weapon. He is weaponizing his incompetence. If you go back now, nothing changes. He will just learn that if he acts helpless enough, you will come running. Don't let your compassion become the excuse to put the chains back on." "I can't stay here forever," I said. "I have to go back eventually. I live in the same city. He is still my dad." "Go back," Jules agreed. "But not for Christmas. Go back when the guests are gone. Go back when the audience has left the building. Deal with him man to man, not manager to client." "After Christmas," I repeated. "December 26th, Jules said firmly. "Boxing Day, the day you box up the old dynamic and throw it out." I hung up, and the decision settled in my gut like a stone foundation. I would not go back tomorrow. I would not go back to save the holiday. The holiday was gone. It was pizza and confusion, and that was what it needed to be. I would go back on the 26th, and I wouldn't go back empty-handed. I opened my laptop. I wasn't going to bring leftovers or apologies. I was going to bring data. I logged into my bank portal again. I downloaded the statements from the last 5 years. I highlighted the charges, the grocery runs, the liquor store hauls, the cleaning services, the replacement linens. Then I found the emails, the threads where he would send me links to expensive items, a $200 ham, a case of vintage wine, with the caption, "Get this for the party." I didn't print them out to throw in his face. I wasn't planning a courtroom drama where I humiliated him into submission. That wasn't my style. And frankly, it wouldn't work. Gordon Maddox would just get defensive and shut down. No, I was preparing a business proposal. I created a folder on my desktop named The Cost of Christmas. I organized the PDFs. I created a simple spreadsheet summarizing the annual spend. I wasn't doing this to be petty. I was doing this to kill the "Kira is just being sensitive" narrative once and for all. When I walked back into that house, I wouldn't be arguing with feelings. I would be arguing with facts. Fact: I spent $4,000 last year. Fact: he contributed 0. Fact: I worked 40 hours of labor on the week of Christmas. I wanted to end the mechanism. I wanted to break the invisible contract that said my time and money were his property. And to do that, I needed to show him the bill. I looked at the screen, the blue light illuminating the dark motel room. For the first time, I wasn't dreading the confrontation. I felt prepared. I was treating this like a work project. Problem: unsustainable resource drain. Solution: restructuring. I closed the laptop. Outside, the wind howled against the glass, a lonely, cold sound. I missed my bed. I missed my cat, who was staying with a neighbor. I even missed the smell of the house, despite everything. But I stayed put. I sent one final text, not to my father, but to Darlene. "I am coming back on the 26th. Keep him alive until then." Darlene replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I turned off the light. The darkness was total. Tomorrow was Christmas Day. I would wake up alone. I would eat breakfast at a diner. I would probably watch a movie on the motel TV. It would be quiet. It would be lonely. But it would be mine. And for this year, that was enough. The drive back to Pittsburgh on December 26th was quiet. The roads were clearer, the frantic holiday traffic replaced by the slow, slushy movement of plow trucks and people returning gifts. I pulled into my father's driveway at 10 in the morning. The house looked the same from the outside, stately brick, manicured hedges. But the energy had shifted. The driveway was empty. The 30 cars were gone. The performance was over. I walked up the path, my boots crunching on the salted concrete. I carried my bag, not filled with groceries this time, but with my laptop and a thin manila folder. I used my key to open the door. The smell hit me first. In years past, the day after Christmas smelled of cinnamon, pine, and leftover ham. Today, the house smelled of stale pepperoni, cardboard, and old coffee grounds. It wasn't a bad smell, necessarily. It was just human. It smelled like a frat house after finals week, not a spread in a lifestyle magazine. "Dad?" I called out. "In the kitchen," came the reply. His voice lacked its usual boom. It sounded gravelly, tired. I walked down the hallway. The living room was a mess of empty pizza boxes stacked like leaning towers of Pisa, crumpled napkins, and beer bottles. The perfect stage was littered with the debris of reality. I found him sitting at the kitchen island, the same island I had stripped bare 3 days ago. He was wearing his bathrobe, nursing a mug of coffee. He looked older, the bluster, the chest-puffing confidence that usually defined Gordon Maddox, was deflated. He looked like a balloon that had been sitting in the corner for a week. He didn't yell when he saw me. He didn't stand up and point a finger. He just looked at me over the rim of his mug with bloodshot eyes. "You're back," he said. It was a statement, not a question. "I am," I said. I set my bag down on the counter. "Did everyone get home safe?" "Yeah," he grunted. "About an hour ago. Ted left early, said the pizza gave him gas." He took a sip of coffee, staring into the black liquid as if it held the answers to the universe. Then he looked up, and the old defensive reflex flickered in his eyes. "Darlene," he said, the name tasting sour in his mouth. "She really did a number on me. Kira, she made it sound like I was running a sweatshop here, like I was using you." I stood still. The kitchen was cold. I hadn't turned the heat up before I left, and clearly, he hadn't touched the thermostat. "You were using me, Dad," I said. I didn't say it with anger. I didn't shout. I said it with the flat, clinical detachment of a doctor diagnosing a fracture. He opened his mouth to argue. I saw the familiar script loading in his eyes. "I am your father. Family helps family. Don't be dramatic." But the words died in his throat. He looked around the empty kitchen, at the bare counters, at the absence of the magic he had taken for granted for a decade. He didn't have the props to support his argument anymore. I just thought we were a team," he mumbled, looking away. "A team shares the load," I said. I opened my bag and pulled out the folder. I slid a single sheet of paper across the granite island toward him. "A team shares the cost. We were not a team. I was the sponsor." He looked down at the paper. It was a simple breakdown of the last 5 years. The numbers were stark. Black ink on white paper. 2020, $3,000. $400. 2021, $3,800. 2022, $4,100. "The cleaning service," I said, pointing to a line item. "You know how the house is always sparkling when the guests arrive? The floors are waxed. The bathrooms smell like lavender. That isn't magic. That is a team of 3 women I hire for $250 a pop. The contract was in my name. The auto pay was on my card. When I left, I canceled it." He stared at the paper, his brow furrowed. I thought the house just stayed clean. We don't make that much of a mess." "Dirt accumulates, Dad," I said gently. "Dust falls. Toilets get stained. The only reason you never saw it is because I paid someone to erase it before you noticed. Perfect doesn't just happen. Perfect is expensive, and perfect has an invoice." He was silent for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Tick, tick, tick. marking the passing of an era. "I didn't know it was that much," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He traced the total figure at the bottom of the page with a shaking finger. $20,000 over 5 years? Kira, why didn't you tell me? Because every time I tried to talk about money, you called me cheap, I reminded him. You said I was embarrassing you. You said, "Don't ruin the mood with numbers." So I stopped talking. I just paid. He winced. It was a small movement, a flinch, as if I had tapped a raw nerve. He remembered. I could see it in his face. He remembered the dismissive waves of his hand, the scoffing, the way he made me feel small for worrying about the bill. "Darlene asked everyone," he said suddenly. "She asked if anyone else chipped in. Nobody did, not a dime." "I know," I said. I felt... He paused, searching for the word. I felt naked, standing there with empty hands. "That is what reality feels like," I said. "It is uncomfortable." He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of the future. The illusion was shattered. The curtain was torn. "So what now?" he asked. "Does this mean no more Christmas? Next year? Do I just sit here alone?" "No," I said. "We can have Christmas." His shoulders relaxed slightly. "But," I continued, my voice firming up, "it will be a real Christmas, not a performance. If you want to invite 30 people, we sit down in November, we make a budget, we ask people to bring dishes, we ask people to chip in for the wine, and if you want a cleaning crew, you write the check." "Potluck?" He wrinkled his nose, the old snobbery flaring up for a second. "A potluck sounds so... common." "Common is better than bankrupt," I said. "And common is better than your daughter disappearing because she can't take it anymore. I have a right to say no. Dad, I have a right to my own holiday, and I have a right to my own money." He looked at the paper again, then back at me. He seemed to be seeing me for the first time, not as the girl who fixed things, but as the woman who had walked away. "You really wouldn't have come back, would you?" he asked. "If I hadn't, if Darlene hadn't." "I don't know," I admitted, "but I know I wouldn't have cooked." He nodded slowly. He took a sip of his cold coffee and grimaced. "Okay," he said. "Okay, next year. We make a plan." "And a budget," I added. "And a budget," he repeated. The words felt foreign on his tongue, but he said them. It wasn't a tearful apology. There was no hugging. Gordon Maddox wasn't the type to break down and beg for forgiveness. But the shift was there. The power dynamic in the kitchen had rotated on its axis. He was no longer the king giving orders. He was a man negotiating terms with an equal. "Do you want some coffee?" he asked, gesturing to the pot. "It is fresh. I made it myself. Found the beans in the freezer. Who hides coffee in the freezer?" "People who want it to stay fresh," I said, a small smile touching my lips. "Yes, I would love a cup." I walked over to the cabinet to get a mug. The shelf was empty. "Oh," he said, looking sheepish. "The mugs are all in the living room, dirty. I didn't know how to run the dishwasher." "I will show you," I said. "But you are loading it." He looked at the pile of dishes in the other room, then back at me. He sighed, a long, heavy exhale of a man accepting his fate. "Fine," he said. "Show me which button to press." We stood in the kitchen for a long moment, the hum of the dishwasher filling the silence between us. It was a mechanical, grinding sound, the sound of a machine doing the work that I had done by hand for a decade. My father watched the red light on the appliance panel as if it were a fascinating new piece of technology. Finally, he turned back to me. He looked down at his hands, which were wrapped around his cold mug of coffee. "I got used to it," he said softly. His voice was stripped of all its usual bluster. "I think that is the truth of it, Kira. You were always just there. You handled the crisis. You handled the details. I got used to you carrying the weight. So I started treating it as normal. I assumed it was easy for you because you made it look easy." It was an apology, or as close to one as Gordon Maddox was capable of giving, It was an admission of negligence, not malice, but negligence can hurt just as much as cruelty. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. I did not rush to comfort him. I did not say, "It is okay," because it wasn't okay. If I forgave him too quickly, we would slide right back into the old groove. "Being used to something does not make it right," I said. My voice was steady, anchoring the room. "You get used to a leaking roof. Dad, that doesn't mean the water isn't rotting the beams. You got comfortable. I got exhausted." He nodded slowly. "I know. I see that now. The house. It felt different yesterday. It felt heavy. I didn't know how to move in it without you directing traffic." "We need a new agreement," I said. I didn't frame it as a request. I framed it as a treaty. "If we are going to do this again next year, the rules change." "Okay," he said. "What are the rules?" "November 1st, I said. "We sit down at this island. We open a spreadsheet. We list every single item needed. From the turkey to the toilet paper. We put a price next to it, and then we assign a name to it. Not just my name, your name, Aunt Paula's name, Uncle Ted's name." He winced slightly at the mention of asking his brother for money, but he didn't argue. "And," I continued, "we send out a list, a potluck list. If Aunt Marge wants to come, she brings a side dish. If the cousins want to drink beer, they bring a cooler. We are not a catering hall, and you are not a feudal lord feeding his subjects. We are a family." "It will look less impressive," he muttered, almost to himself. "It will look real," I corrected him. "And that brings me to the most important condition, the non-negotiable one." He looked up, meeting my eyes. "Which is?" "You have to stop the narrative," I said. "No more telling people I am sensitive. No more telling them I am having a mood, or that I am difficult when I set a boundary. You used those words to discredit me so you didn't have to listen to me. If you want me here, you have to respect me, not just to my face, but when I am not in the room. If I hear one whisper that I ruined Christmas because I was emotional, I am gone, and next time, I won't leave a note." The threat hung in the air, sharp and absolute. My father looked at me. He studied my face, searching for the hesitant, pleasing daughter he had raised. He didn't find her. He found a woman who knew her worth and was charging tax. "I agree," he said, and this time, he didn't sound like he was placating me. He sounded like a man who had just looked over a cliff edge and decided to step back. "I promise, no more stories." I let out a breath I'd been holding since I parked the car. The tension in my shoulders dropped an inch. It wasn't a perfect victory. People don't change overnight. But it was a start. "Good," I said. "Then there is one last thing you should know." I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I opened my banking app and turned the screen toward him. "I made a change to my automatic transfers this morning," I said. He squinted at the screen. "What am I looking at?" "For the last 5 years, I have spent roughly $4,000 every December on your party," I explained. "That is about $330 a month that I should have been saving. So, starting January 1st, I have set up an automatic transfer. $350 will leave my checking account on the 1st of every month." "To the party fund?" he asked, looking hopeful. "No," I smiled. It was a genuine smile, bright and fierce. "To a high-yield savings account named Kira's Life. It is locked. I can't touch it for anything other than myself." He blinked. "What are you going to use it for?" "I don't know yet," I said. "Maybe a trip to Italy. Maybe a down payment on a house that is mine, where I make the rules. Maybe just an emergency fund so I never feel trapped again. But it is for my future, not for your reputation." He looked at me, and his expression shifted. The confusion faded, replaced by a strange sort of recognition. He wasn't looking at his staff anymore. He was looking at another adult. He was seeing me as a separate entity, a person with dreams and plans that had nothing to do with him. "Italy," he mused. "Your mother always wanted to go to Italy." "Maybe I will take her spirit with me," I said, "but I'm going on my own dime." The silence that followed was comfortable. The air in the kitchen felt lighter. cleared of the secrets and resentments that had clogged the vents for years. "Well," he said, slapping his hands on his knees, "it is December 26th. The fridge is empty, the guests are gone, and I am starving. What do we do?" I looked at the stove. I had zero intention of turning it on. "We order out," I said, "and not pizza. I am sick of looking at those boxes." "Chinese," he suggested. "There is that place on 4th Street, the one with the good dumplings." "Chinese sounds perfect," I said. "I will pay," he said quickly. He reached for his wallet on the counter. "My treat. Put your card away." "I will," I said. We sat in the living room an hour later, eating Kung Pao chicken out of white cartons. We didn't turn on the TV. We didn't talk about the relatives. We just talked. He told me about a book he was reading on the Civil War. I told him about a project at work. It was mundane. It was simple. It was imperfect. And it was the best meal I had ever had in that house. I looked at him as he struggled with his chopsticks, laughing at his own clumsiness. I realized then that my disappearance hadn't been an act of revenge. Revenge is about hurting someone else. What I had done was an act of rescue. I had to vanish to save myself. Yes, but in doing so, I had forced the truth into the light. My family didn't need a perfect hostess. They needed a reality check. They needed to see the price tag on the magic trick. I took a bite of a dumpling and smiled. The perfect Christmas was dead. Long live the real one. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Drop a comment below with your city or country so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed seeing Kira take her life back, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need a little inspiration to set their own boundaries. See you in the next video.